Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Ray Tampa podcast. Our podcast is new. Our podcast is bold, and truth is our guiding principle. But political correctness is out the door. We will tell it like it is. My name is Ray Tampa, and I'm the host of the Ray Tampa podcast. We have in the studio today my co-host, Mr. Jamie Wilson III. Our other co-host, Mr. Russell Cato, is unable to be with us today. So Mr. Wilson and I are going to hold it down. Today, we're going to discuss the events surrounding the Tennessee 3. I'm going to read an article I wrote, and my co-host, Mr. Wilson, and I will discuss the article. The title: The suspension of the Tennessee 3 is just another gross example of the hypocrisy in our democracy. The article: In April 2023, we had yet another tragic mass shooting in Nashville, Tennessee, that resulted in the brutal deaths of 5 individuals and the wounding of several others, including a police officer who was shot in the head. Thousands of young adults and others marched and protested the Tennessee legislature's resolve to do nothing about the gun violence in their state. The speaker of the state's legislature attempted to limit discussion on the gun violence situation. Therefore, Representatives Justin Jones, Justin Pearson, and Gloria Johnson, now known as the Tennessee 3, stood at the podium and used a bullhorn to force the issue of their voices being heard. The Republican-led majority knew they had the votes to make it happen, so they proposed and eventually voted to expel the Tennessee 3 from the legislative body. As fate would have it, the 2 Black representatives, Jones and Pearson, were voted out, but their white colleague was spared. She suggested that the color of her skin played a part in her being spared. Bold racism. Also, it is worth mentioning that Representatives Jones and Pearson were the 2nd and 3rd members of the Tennessee legislature to ever be expelled, ever. While attempting to defend himself against being expelled, Representative Jones said, quote, "Let's talk expulsions. For years, one of your colleagues, who was an admitted child molester, sat in this chamber. No expulsion. One member sits in this chamber who was found guilty of domestic abuse. No expulsion. We had a former speaker sit in this chamber who is now under federal investigation. No expulsion. We have a member still under federal investigation. No expulsion. We had a member pee, urinate in another member's chair. In this chamber, no expulsion. End of quote. Furthermore, Representative Jones said, quote, "Since you're trying to put us on trial, I'll say what you're really putting on trial is the state of Tennessee." End of quote. I want to add my comment by saying that the state legislature also put the country on trial. The whole world witnessed the hypocrisy, the stupidity, the extreme racism evident in the good old USA. Fortunately, the county political bodies for the districts represented by Justin Jones and Justin Pearson quickly and unanimously voted to temporarily put them back in office to continue representing their constituents. However, they will have to campaign again for those seats a little later. The reinstallment votes were awesome moments in history. They allowed for lots of joy to be expressed and frustrations to be relieved. The people's representatives were restored to their rightful positions. Now comes the attacks on the characters of the Tennessee Three. Attacks from the likes of Tucker Carlson, naturally, Megyn Kelly, and guests on her Sirius radio program. Tucker Carlson suggested that Justin Pearson talks like a sharecropper, whatever that means. Megyn Kelly said that Pearson was a faker by suggesting his speech pattern was one way earlier, but it's different now. Talk show host Piers Morgan compared the two Black lawmakers to the insurrectionists on January 6th. How ridiculous. These characters or these character hits are nothing but attempts to distract from the real issue of the failure of the Tennessee state legislature in refusing to do something about gun violence and their failure to prioritize the health and safety of the kids. The distractions are designed to ignore the data that says 70% of Americans want some effective measures of gun control enacted. The Tennessee Three, now and forever enshrined in the history of Tennessee for their efforts to force discussion and debate about the need to make residents safer. Yay, Tennessee Three. So at this point, I'm going to invite Mr. Wilson to allow for healthy engagement of discussion here. What you have to say, Jay?
Okay, first and foremost, this protest was about gun violence, where 6 people got killed, 3 of them kids. And some things needed to be said about that because it is getting ridiculous. Not to mention Tennessee being a racist state, Republican ran and probably NRA controlled. The white lady, Mrs. Gloria Johnson, she was right. It is about skin color. It is about that. Now, their excuse for saying why they got rid of the 2 guys, expelled the 2 guys versus her were, they said, oh, she just stood there. She wasn't as animated. Said the 2 black guys used bull horns and they were, you know, a lot more boisterous, and that's a stupid excuse. It still boils down to racism. There was no need for these guys to be expelled. In 2022, just last year, Glenn Casada was arrested and indicted. He was the former state House Speaker on federal charges for bribery, and he was not expelled, as you said. David Byrd.
Wait a minute. What was his name?
His name was Glenn Casada.
And he was the former House Speaker, you said?
Former state House Speaker.
Right.
Republican Party. That was in 2020. And those are the bribery charges. And he wasn't expelled for that.
Okay.
David Byrd in 2018 was accused of sexual assault of basketball players to 3 girls. No expulsion for that.
There were 3 girls involved in his charge?
Three teenage girls. Yes, 3 teenage girls in 2018. Yeah, the sexual assault. Never expelled for that. Okay, so when digging a little deeper in this with Justin Pierce and Justin Jones, the reason they said that they were expelled, the bullhorn was one. They said they didn't ask to be recognized. You know how they do. Senator blah 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 wish to be recognized. So they're basically saying they didn't ask to be recognized. They used the bullhorns. I mean, petty little stuff like that. And the main issue was the subject itself. Gun. They don't want to talk about gun control.
Yeah.
That turns them off, because I said it's NRA. It's an NRA ran state. The Republicans, that's where they're getting their cash from. That's where they're getting their money. So that is so petty. No one died. You cannot compare it to the January 6th insurrection. No one died. No one was hurt. If they got their feelings hurt with words, then get over it. No one was hurt. And so when Mr. Pearson was asked, why didn't you go through proper channels? He's like, listen, we've gone through proper channels. We sit there with our hands up. He said on many votes previous to this. And he said, I raised my hand this time, but on many, and this is from the Breakfast Club. You can look it up. This interview on the Breakfast Club. He said, it's been many times when we're voting, we got our hands up, we're not recognized. The person controlling it can not pick you to talk at any time. So we went through proper channels. It did not work. And it did not work in this instance. So we did what we did, which was nonviolent. You know, he says a lot of disparities. It's a lot of racial disparities just within that Republican Party in that state. So he did go through the right channels. They did try the right way, both of them, all 3 of them, but it did not work.
Hold on. I want to dwell on that point, and then I'm going to get back to you. Dwelling on that point, going through the right channels, Justin Pearson and Justin Jones both alluded to the fact that it was typical, very typical of them to not be granted the opportunity to speak.
Right.
They were being denied the opportunity to speak. But this gun violence situation, the mass killing that recently occurred, fired them up, as well as thousands of others.
Right.
Therefore, they felt the need to demand to be heard.
Right.
And this is what caused them to be expelled by the racists.
And that's all it was. They did nothing wrong. That's all it was. And that is racist.
And what they said, Jay, is only because the TV cameras were in the legislature that they were allowed to speak, to defend themselves in terms of the expulsions.
Yeah.
But I'll let you go back because you were doing a great job in talking about this situation.
So there's a statement from one of the former Republicans, Kent Cafe. This is April 6th. He called it a dark day in the House because of what's going on. And basically, I'm paraphrasing. He said, Now we're known as the most racist state in the U.S., Calfee wrote in a tweet. Will new companies want to come invest in Tennessee? With starting up a business? And there are some that's probably going to be relocating. The damage caused will not repair in my lifetime, but a good place to start is calling for a vote to, basically bring them back. That was when it happened.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that
Mhm.
point up because I wasn't even thinking about the economic concerns
Mhm.
about what the legislature did.
Yeah.
But these particular legislators, all three of them, they were unknowns.
Now they're known.
Now they're known.
Now they're known.
Well known.
Stock has gone up.
And the legislature, they did all their dirty work under the cover, so to speak. But now it's known how stupid and ridiculous they are in terms of the racism, the bold racism.
Yeah, they're known for their racism.
Yes. And the guy said, now we're known as the most racist state in the country. You got that right. You got that right. But the Tennessee three, the guys' speaking abilities, their leadership abilities were brought to the forefront as a result of these issues. Number one, gun violence issue, the mass killing, all these young people protesting. Do something, do something. And the state legislators are ignoring their pleas, ignoring their pleas.
Right.
So hats off to all three of them. All three of them. I really like how they stood together.
Yeah.
I really like how even though she was spared, she still stood strongly in support of the other two, to the point that she made it known that her skin color probably is what spared her.
They made like it was by one vote. She was spared by one vote, but we know better.
Yeah.
Biden, according to USA Today, Biden commented as well. Biden described the explosion as a shocking, undemocratic, and without precedence. And he accused Tennessee House representatives of choosing to punish silence, and expel duty elected representatives who engaged in a peaceful protest instead of taking actions to keep students safe. So that was his comment. He didn't comment on the shooting or anything else. He commented just on what happened. And
well, Kamala Harris went to Tennessee.
yes, she did.
I don't think I've seen or heard Kamala Harris as emotional and as animated as she was in speaking about the issue of gun violence and the expulsion of the Tennessee, the Tennessee two, two of them expelled. And in my own mind, after listening to Kamala Harris, I'm thinking, God, we need more of that. We need a whole lot more of that.
These gentlemen went through a lot. Just prior to this, the speaker would refuse a lot of times during votes. The speaker would obviously refuse to recognize them in previous votes. This guy being a Republican, he said it was so disrespectful. Or they would be told, if you say anything about gun violence, we'll turn off your mic, we'll turn off your voting machine, stuff like that. This is wrong and illegal, but that's happened to these guys.
Yes, yes.
They spoke on it at the Breakfast Club in an interview. About that. I mean, it's just wrong. It's wrong. And it puts a spectacle on just how racist Tennessee is as a state, as far as on the Republican side. And this needed to be seen. Maybe this was a good thing because now they're magnified and everybody knows what's going on. Everybody knows.
Now they're magnified. The whole world knows who these individuals are. And prior to the mass shooting, you didn't know who Justin Pearson or Justin Jones or Gloria Johnson were. You didn't know. I didn't know. But now we do. And we know them for good reasons because they were determined to let their voices be heard as they advocated for their constituencies.
Right.
They advocated for their constituencies. They advocated for the safety of kids in Tennessee and the safety of others.
Mhm.
How can these legislators, in the wake of this horrendous mass killing, simply ignore people that want to debate and discuss it?
Because it has not happened to anyone in their family.
And
their
we've
loved
talked
ones.
about that point
Right.
too.
We mentioned that last year.
Right, right,
And
right.
that's what it is. Until you have an up close and personal experience with something like that, they don't care, man. And like I say, the NRA, that keeps their pockets fat.
But let's
They
talk
know
about
not,
the NRA.
they know not to talk against that.
The NRA just held in Indianapolis,
Mhm.
I think it was that city or Indiana, they just held a convention.
Mhm.
And the top Republicans from around the country spoke. Trump, DeSantis, and so many others who want to be president. They spoke. And almost every one of them, I'm not aware of any that didn't speak
Mhm.
in favor of leaving the guns as they are. They are not interested in anything dealing with restrictions on guns. And they're out of step with the American people.
You're out of step with time, period.
Well, Time says 70%
Mhm.
of the American people want something done.
Right, right.
And how do they expect to continue winning seats when they're just ignoring the will of the people?
Because it's the money, it's the greed. The NRA has a lot of money. They have a lot of contracts, defense contracts, contracts all over the world. They're making money and they control people. You talk about the Illuminati 1%. I would put the NRA right up there with them. They have crazy money. So if these guys are paying your kids tuition and all this stuff for all the times, just like what's the guy, the billionaire that's back in Thomas, the Chief Justice, just like all that shadiness going on. It's special interest groups that control these people like puppets, and they're getting paid. They're getting something for it.
Yes.
So that's what it's all about. And something's got to happen with that. But another point, and I've said this before, when it was happening in the Black community, Black and brown communities, it didn't even make national news. Think about all the killings, drugs, gang killings. Think about that just go on the day still. But one school, a couple of school shootings, which is very bad, and my heart goes out to the families and everybody that affected. But this has been happening in the hood on the regular. You know, it's just like the crack epidemic. As long as it was in the hood, it was all good. As soon as opioids started attacking the white communities, oh my God, they told us just say no. But now, oh my God, we put up clinics. It's mental illness. That's what it is, blah, blah, blah. They make it pretty.
Well, the Republican legislators or candidates for political office, they're all singing the same tune. It's not about guns. It's not about guns. It's about mental illness. It's about bold criminals just wanting to commit crimes. It's about everything but the proliferation of guns. We stated in a previous podcast that this country has more guns per capita than any other country in the world. As a matter of fact, we have 2 or 3 times as many guns than the next country in terms of the proliferation. I believe, as many on the Democratic side have said, reduce the number of guns and do these other things, we will reduce the number of killings.
Right.
Joe Biden, when he was a senator, he led the effort. I can't remember the year, but he led the effort to restrict guns in our country. banned assault weapons in our country. And it was reported that the deaths and the number of mass shootings decreased. I'm thinking the number was about 70%. That's a huge drop.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge drop. So if it happened then, why can't we get it done again?
Right.
Why can't we get it done again?
I think it needs to be, and I've said this before, it needs to be psyche valves, not just for crazy police officers, but just for individuals owning gun too. You need some type of psyche valve going on, and I'm gonna back up. With police officers, they need like one of those FBI psyche valves to really know if they're crazy and what they've done 30 years ago that was crazy. But I'm just saying, for regular people, you need some type of psyche valve. Just don't hand these people a gun. And what bothers me is, yeah, you mentioned mental illness. Yes, that mental illness is real. But when it happens in the hood and we do it, it's not considered mental illness. We're monsters. We're criminals. We're anti-American. We're terrorists. But when they do it, oh, it had to be some form of mental illness. I'm sick of that shit. It's ridiculous. I mean, this is such a racist country, and it's not every Republican is racist, but I'm just saying that it's a lot of, it ain't looking good. For the ones that are not racist, need to speak up and make a change, because it's not looking good.
Yeah.
And we're known as a racist country, and this needs to stop. It's in our face.
It's so ridiculous that so few Republicans in leadership roles will speak up against the retarded ones.
Right. Look at Trump. They were scared to talk when he was in there.
And it's not just Trump.
Yeah.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's as ridiculous as they come. She wants to defend the guy that leaked all of these top secrets, saying that he's a white male, he's a Christian, he's this, he's that. Therefore, he must be the enemy of Joe Biden or the Biden administration. Therefore, she supports him.
She's throwing out Christians. First of all, the word Republican and Christian to me is a joke. You got them making all these racist laws, Project Blitz and the other white Christian group, making all these, they're writing these bills, they're pushing this stuff through, which is it's obviously racist.
Well, the thing about the Christians, quote unquote, and I say that with a large degree of reluctance, they got mainly what they wanted, a conservative Supreme Court.
Right.
They got that. After getting that, they decide, okay, let's push harder on some other things.
Roe versus Wade.
Well, most definitely. And now what they're doing in the schools across the country. Yeah. Just ridiculous stuff, trying to change the country.
Right. We need to stay woke. Stay woke, push back. Stay woke, push back. And I mean, and the Republicans are going to keep doing stupid things like this. And it's just going to make people more aware, because it's a small group. It is a small percentage in the Republican Party, I would like to think, that are the racists, that's trying to keep people of color, minorities marginalized. I mean, so they can maintain whatever type of control they think they're getting. I say to Black people, move into those areas like Tennessee, flood these northern, mainly Republican states, start living there, because if you do that, change will come. Don't not go to this state just because. Now, if they're lynching and all that, then you do what you got to do. But I'm just saying, for the most part, move into these states, because the more of us there, the more they're going to depend on us with jobs and services and things like that. And then we can make a change, and then we can start getting some of these laws changed. Because right now it's overran with that small percentage of white racist Republicans that are bonding together and making these laws. And we also need to our government needs to get rid of these lobbyists. Lobbyists control America. You get rid of these lobbyists and get them out of government, you will see a change. It'll be a more pure government. You're still gonna have your racists and stupidness, but they won't have the money and the power backing.
Well, I want to offer one last comment since you did mention his name, Clarence Thomas.
Ugh.
Our very first podcast was about Clarence Thomas. The title of the podcast was Clarence Thomas, What an Embarrassment. What an embarrassment. That same podcast can be played today under the same title, Clarence Thomas, What an Embarrassment. But at any rate, time is up. We're going to have to bring this discussion to a close. I do appreciate you, Mr. Wilson, for all the excellent contributions you made to this discussion.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to say to our listening audience, thank you for tuning in to 99.1 FM The Berg and listening to the Ray Tampa podcast. And do so each and every Tuesday, 5:30 p.m. I also ask that you visit YouTube, and type in the Ray Tampa podcast and take a look at all of our podcasts. And lastly, well, not lastly, but also visit the Weekly Challenger and take a look at some of the articles we have in the Weekly Challenger. Lastly, I would like to say sponsorships are welcome. This is the hottest political podcast in all of Florida. Thank you.